man with no penis. I'm giving an example of madness. But I don't think that the earthquake is necessarily going to end up with a new earth that's more liberal. I think it's going to end up with a new earth that's more conservative, incidentally. Because once people come to understand what this extreme acceptance or tolerance has led to, which most adults see, they're going to come to understand how dangerous the world is that they've created through their tolerance or acceptance. And I've been trying to preach this for years. You think I'm a mean guy? You think I don't know what it is to be, let us say, a liberal? I was a liberal when I was young. I didn't know any better. And then when I got bitten by it, in many different ways, I slowly evolved to be who I am many years ago. And people say, well, you're a phony. What do you mean I'm a phony? People don't evolve? I mean, if you're still the same at 50 that you were at 20, what does that make you? It makes you an idiot. I mean, you're frozen. You haven't evolved. What are you? You're an unevolved child. Everyone evolves if they're flexible and their minds are open. But if you don't evolve and you want to ape a 20-year-old when you're 60, then I pity you. That's all. That's how I look at things. That's my worldview. So this whole topic of creativity and psychosis has provoked a lot of discussion of the kind of discussion I like, and I think it's the third show in a series that I've done, and it's all after my bout with the flu. I've noticed this change in myself since I had this virus did something to me. I don't know what it was. It probably cleaned out my brain or something, or the antibiotics and the mega doses of nutrients that I put myself on have changed or clarified my feelings and my thinking in so many different ways. And it's encouraged me, really, to dare to take the risk of going into areas such as this instead of the same old stuff that you're going to hear all day long. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do the other stuff. Hillary and corruption. And I mean, you can read all of it. We know what she is. They're absolute villains. They're villainous, her and her husband. And then what? Why aren't they arrested for stealing the money and running it through like a laundry? Why? Why? I don't know why. Because they own the government. Why? Because they bought off the congressman. They bought off the FBI. What do I know who they bought off? If they smeared leaders of the world, why wouldn't they smear the FBI? Everything's owned. So why should I talk about it? Anyhow, I want to go back to these topics here and talk about creativity and psychosis and things of that nature. And let's go to WDRC Radio, where a man from an institution is calling us. I don't know the individual's name. Line 4, go ahead, please. What's your name?
Robert.
And Robert, are you institutionalized right now?
Not at the present time, sir.
Okay, so what motivated the call?
I'm disgusted with the way the system is run. What's happened to me, I've done nothing all my life, and I believe that there's an onset of this disease. I believe that it's a lack of discipline. And we're not being able to discipline our children.
Do you think that that's what accounts for your being hospitalized?
Yes, I do, sir.
Why? Because you were not disciplined, Robert?
Because I was what?
You were not disciplined as a child? Is that what you're saying?
I was first institutionalized at around the age of 18.
What did you do? What had you done?
I used to smoke marijuana, sir, and I heard you speak about marijuana. And
it's one of them. It's probably the most dangerous of all drugs because it's being presented by Hollywood as a rather benign weed. In many individuals, it provokes overt schizophrenia.
You got that exactly right, sir.
Exactly right. I know that for a fact. It provokes overt schizophrenia in susceptible individuals. In that sense, it is to be feared. It is a very dangerous drug. Thank you for the call, Robert. I don't want to dwell on that anymore and make you feel in any way upset, so we'll move on. He's saying marijuana basically put him into the institution. I agree with it. WBOB Radio. Here's a beautiful call coming up on line 6. Go ahead, please. What's your name?
George.
What's on your mind, George?
Yes, George. My name is George. My mother worked for Thigpen, who wrote Three Faces of Eve, and she typed the manuscript. I sat in his office, read psychiatric journals.
Wait, I'm sorry. I know the book who wrote it?
Thigpen, Dr. Thigpen, Augusta, Georgia.
Okay, so what's your main point?
That is why I've been interested all my life in psychiatry. And in doing extensive reading and working with electronics in multiple places around the world, I found that one of the most important people with respect to what's happening in Congress in the world was a doctor who worked for Stalin and Pavlov. And this is about the 100th anniversary of his major work where he won the Nobel Prize.
You're talking about the Pavlov that we all know in terms of the Pavlovian reaction?
Yes. And most people know that, but that's been going on for thousands of years where people have given treats to dogs and then they react more in the way that you want them to react. But he also found that certain frequencies, like shock therapy, can induce all kinds of psychiatric problems. And after he found that some frequencies at extremely low power would help kill pathogens in the body and help people. And we're in a situation here.
Well, slow down. You're giving a lot of information. Yeah. For example, magnetism is used in treating illnesses, and there's current evidence that magnetism does work in some cases. It's not all crazy stuff. I get it.
I lived in Egypt, and they have resonance rooms there along the Nile, and Malta also has resonance rooms. Those are good frequencies. Some of your major composers of 300 or 400 years ago, Beethoven and others, knew about some of these frequencies. And Pavlov kind of knew about these frequencies, and he did extensive work before the Soviets took over Russia and after. And he told Stalin, stop killing people. I can control them. You don't have to kill them. He's the only person in the world that went up against Stalin, and Stalin said, okay, you'll live. Your work is too important.
I know where you're going here. Are you saying that the government is controlling individuals with frequencies now?
I put in the computers overseas that do it.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm listening. Are you suggesting that there are sound waves being generated in this country to control the population?
Yes, and they come in different forms. They can be iPods, smart meters, radio waves. The most effective are quantum wave, where you vibrate neutrinos. Neutrinos come at us from all different parts of the universe, and you can vibrate them, and that type of waveform moves extremely fast. The Chinese are getting into researching it now. The Russians sold this technology to the Iranians.
Okay, wait, this is great stuff. We could talk for hours on this. So let's say we have an individual who senses that this is true. What can they do to block these waves?
Well, it's pretty hard to block the quantum waves. The other waves can be blocked. You can not spend so much time on an iPod. Force your city, county to get rid of the smart meters and go to a better type of meter that has better frequencies on it. Don't spend so much time on computers. Just don't overload yourself with the radiological.
I'm in front of a screen 18 hours a day lately, from morning till night, then to television. So, but I'm going to give you an example. I love being near the water, whether it be San Francisco Bay or on the water, next to the water. I find, doesn't water absorb many of these waves?
Absolutely. Water will absorb the waves and different other substances, and there is treatment, and it's been highly controversial, and people like Dingell and others in Congress have worked to try to keep that medical equipment out of the United States. About 20,000 doctors worldwide have that equipment, which undoes the damage, and I have one. I grandfathered in. I'm a chemical engineer with a minor in pharmacy, kind of a pre-med degree. And I picked up some extremely nasty stuff over in the Middle East. As you remember, Caligula, Alexander, Caesar, and Muhammad all had seizures. And they had seizures.
Let's pause right here, because I'm fascinated in listening to you. It's rather discursive in the sense that there's no form of structure to what you're saying, other than the idea that waves are being generated by machinery to control the population. I'd rather just listen to your mind flow. I'll be right back to do so right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. Hey, Savage. All right, this is a great conversation. Let's go back. Caller on line 6 from BOB Radio, I believe in Jacksonville, Florida. He is suggesting that some insanity on the planet is controlled by waves, in some cases waves generated by governments. WBOB Radio, go ahead, please. So what were you saying, sir?
Yes, Michael. And it's not all waves that are out there, and it's not intentional on everybody's part who has radio stations or they have some type of electronic equipment, but specifically based on Pavlov's technology and people who came after him, there are specific ways that can create paranoia. Manchurian Candidates, and there are 2 movies about Manchurian Candidates. One with Frank Sinatra. And in both cases, it was a torture-type thing. But the Russians didn't really need to use torture as they developed the technique of which frequencies to use to turn someone to a Manchurian Candidate. Bad drugs accelerate the process, and bad diseases.
But let's boil it down. You say you work with such... We only have 30 seconds, which is a shame. I said to you, living next to the water can block some of these waves. You agreed with that. What other practical matters can people use to control what enters their brain?
Just reduce the amount of radiological waves coming in their house and in their brain, and take a break. Get away from it for a while.
In other words, don't listen to talk radio, in other words. I mean, I'm affecting their brain waves with my voice, am I not?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
Some of the greatest art is visionary art. And you want to talk about religion and visionary art, and how it changed through time, and how the Catholics saw it differently than the Protestants. And you may not understand this, and people may find this shocking. Do you know that in Islam, where mosques have no images because it's prohibited by their religion, even in these mosques, there are some in the world which have diamonds that are in these churches, in these mosques, dangling. These ornaments are amongst the very few vision-inducing devices permitted in Islam. As I said, mosques have no images. But sometimes in the Near East, the austerity of the mosque is sometimes mitigated by the transporting glitter of Rococo crystal. That's something you may not know, but it's a little side issue. Stained glass. Why was stained glass put into churches? Stained glass was installed for a reason. It was to create a vision. To people would look up from their books and see a vision of another world or other worlds. A visionary stained glass. And then what happened was the Reformation occurred. And the Protestants disapproved the visionary experience and attributed a magical virtue to the printed word. And they put in clear windows. And churches with clear windows, the readers could look at their Bibles and prayer books and not be tempted to escape from the sermon into the visionary other worlds. See, this is all connected to what we're talking about. Or let's talk about madness and genius, creativity and psychosis. You know that famous picture, The Scream? You ever see the one, The Scream, by the celebrated Norwegian artist Edvard Munch? You'd know. If you saw the picture, you'd know it's of a man screaming with his hands next to his ears. And he was a celebrated Norwegian artist, Edvard Munch. He died 70 years ago. And he created this masterpiece, The Scream. And it came to him in a vision as he stood on the edges of a fjord. And he said, the sun began to set. Suddenly the sky turned blood red. I stood there trembling with anxiety, and I sensed an endless scream passing through nature. So what is that? Well, people said that represents the angst of modern man, that he felt as an artist. And he said, my fear of life is necessary to me, as is my illness. They are indistinguishable from me, and their destruction would destroy my art. Now, today, the medical profession is a little too quick, in my opinion, to suppress all such feelings with medication, and in so doing, quenching creativity across the planet. Literally putting out the light of creativity with medication, as I'm talking to you. And if you think they're doing the patient a favor, you're mistaken. It's not always to the benefit of the patient to suppress the vision, incidentally. So let's go to the callers. And I don't know if you even want to talk much more about this. I don't know how I got into this, but I can't get out of it. Help me. I am trapped in an interesting discussion on talk radio. And I intend to stay here because I'm enjoying it. And we're not going to have Obama in this hour. There's going to be no sound bites from the madman.